Hello, my friends. This is Deepak, and today I have something to share with you. A new issue of the New Scientist says the universe as we've never seen it before. I'll report on that after I actually read it. I haven't read it, but there's another article here by actually a journalist, a science journalist that I know. And the article is called Your Inner Voice, how you can take control of it to beat stress. And then there's a nice article on the inner voice, or what we call the inner dialogue, internal affairs. And the author is actually very well-known science writer, Caroline Williams. And I've interviewed her on the Chopra well as well. So while the article is very nice on the inner dialogue and how it can cause stress, it's taking a physicalist approach, which means that the brain creates your inner dialogue, which of course I totally disagree with. But there are some other interesting insights here that our inner dialogue is determined by our childhood, and that there are four different characters that appear in our inner dialogue on a regular basis, and they're all basically in one form or another the caretakers or parents or the society we were exposed to through language, which is very interesting. Okay, so language starts to appear very early. And by 5 years, a child has an inner dialogue. And the inner dialogue represents four characters, according to this article. The first is the what do you call, the faithful friend. The second is the proud rival. The third is the ambivalent parent. And the fourth is the helpless child. Okay, so faithful friend is always listening to you and saying, go ahead, I'll take care of you. The proud rival is trying to get the best out of you like a coach. The ambivalent parent represents probably arguments between parents and caretakers, and the helpless child that feels lonely, abandoned at some times. So that inner dialogue of those four characters comes about as a result of the acquisition of language. But of course, then the article, being physicalist, says language is controlled by the brain. There's Broca's area, there's a motor cortex, there's a sensory cortex, etc. Through the sensory cortex, you get information in the world, from the world, and motor cortex executes actions. But the question is, who is getting the information from whatever, the world, the body, the mind, and who or what is giving orders to the brain? If I have the intention to move my arm, then what is it that tells the brain to move the arm? So that, of course, we call the sense of self. And then, of course, there are neural correlates of the sense of self or ego, which is the default mode network, etc., etc. Whilst this approach is good, it doesn't actually really tell you much other than it is confusing you with your brain, a physical object, and that physical object itself is known by awareness as a combination of modes of knowing and experience. So your brain is sculpted by experience, but it is generated, it's created by genes. Once again, your brain is generated or created by genes, and in turn, it is sculpted by experience, every experience. But experience can only be in consciousness. It cannot be anywhere else. Experience implies awareness of consciousness. There's no experience without awareness, consciousness, and consciousness being non-local, all experience is processed non-locally. So I'd like to introduce you to a different way of thinking about your inner dialogue, because you won't be able to control your inner dialogue other than maybe take antidepressants or whatever. And the inner dialogue is responsible for most of our anxiety, depression, phobias, etc. So let's take the Vedantic approach, which says there are 9 modes of knowing. First mode of knowing is sound. Second mode of knowing is sensation, texture. Third mode of knowing is seeing, or therefore color, shape, or form. Fourth mode of knowing is what we call taste, and therefore flavors. Fifth mode of knowing is odors or fragrances, okay, through the act of smelling. You can already see that these 5 modes of knowing are not absolute, they're relative. They access a very narrow band of experience, and they're species specific, therefore not ultimately reliable in giving us knowledge of the truth. 5 modes of knowing, which are the 5 senses. The 6th mode of knowing is the mind that knows through both feelings and imagination and thought and rationality. But what is rationality? Rationality is a mode of knowing, as is mathematics, as is music, as is logic, but there are other modes of knowing that are mental, we can say. And these are, our impulse for desire, our memories, which are, of course, experiences of the past. And so the 6th mode of knowing is mind, feelings, images, thoughts. And the 6th mode of knowing is our ego identity or our self-image, because everything is filtered through the conditioned mind, which now you can see is the result of the internal dialogue, those 4 characters that influenced us in childhood, all 4 of them: the faithful friend, the ambivalent parent, the proud rival, and the helpless child. But there are many characters. You are already a multiple personality entity. And those characters are playing different modes of knowing and experience, and also recycling that in society through language that then filters down as the individual is just this recycling of collective modes of knowing, therefore the hypnosis of social conditioning. So what's beyond all these modes of knowing? I mentioned 8, I think. So the 5 senses, the mind, intellect, and ego. Intellect is a mode of knowing also. So now we have 8, and intellect makes us decide choices. Should I have a mushroom omelette or should I have a bagel? What decides that? In the intellect, but it's entangled with other modes of knowing. You see, all entangled modes of knowing, and these entangled modes of knowing culminate in the mode of knowing that we call thought, entangled with everything. So those are 8 modes of knowing. The 9th mode of knowing is silent witness, the highest intelligence. When you can witness mind, intellect, ego, when you can witness the 5 perceptions without interpretation, then in that mode of knowing is the awakening of your true self. That leads to insight, intuition, imagination, creativity, higher archetypal consciousness. 9 modes of knowing, but there's a 10th. And that is going to the source of all knowing, which is transcendence. Therefore, Sat Chitananda. Sat means truth, Chit means pure consciousness, and Ananda means pure bliss. So now that you have understood these 9 modes of knowing and their source, you can see that transcendence goes beyond all modes of knowing. This is a start of a new series where I can do longer videos. Today's title is Modes of Knowing and Experience and Transcending Them into Pure Awareness. Thank you, and let me know what you think of this longer version, okay?